following program is intended for mature audiences.
Rudy's Revelation.
This is a conspiracy. That's what this is.
Hey everyone, welcome to today's episode. It is Wednesday, January 15th, 2025. So before we get into the news, I just want to give an apology for not getting an episode of Tuesdays with Perry last night. I had a late meeting that kept me very late. I didn't have a chance to connect with Perry, so we may have an episode tonight of Tuesdays with Perry on Wednesday, so stay tuned for that. So today in the news, the Biden era comes to an end as he embraces communist Cuba, and the left rages as their deviance and extremism looms large in the public eye. So let's get into the headlines for today, Wednesday, January 15th. All right, we're going to start with the New York Post, and we're going to start with the Los Angeles wildfires. Los Angeles police arrest 4 people for allegedly trying to start new blazes as wildfire death toll rises to 25. This isn't surprising. I think what they're trying to do by unleashing the homeless hordes to go start new fires is to conflate and confound the idea that arson was a possibility in the origination of the wildfires, because first they toyed with the idea that utility wires somehow started the fires. Well, where the fire started, there was no utility wires. So now they're going to this idea that, well, it was caused by humans, but it was a fireworks fire that happened on New Year's Day or New Year's Eve that was extinguished, but somehow reignited 7 days later. As I said previously, all this is to hide the fact that there was industrial arson at play here. This was done on purpose, and of course, they could blame it on anything they want to blame it on. They couldn't blame it on lightning strikes. They tried to blame it on climate change. We know it was caused by humans right when the Santa Ana winds, which are forecasted a week ahead, started. And to compound the disaster, they were ill prepared, either purposefully or by accident. I don't really believe it's by accident. I mean, they had this reservoir drain for some time. So let's move on with some of the headlines here. Well, actually, let's continue with this story here. Let's just get into the lead. The Los Angeles police have arrested 4 people on arson charges for allegedly trying to ignite new fires as firefighters continue to fight the Palisades and Eaton blazes that have killed a combined 25 people so far. The 4 were arrested in separate arson incidents that occurred outside the wildfire zones, announced Tuesday as a death toll rose. Arson. If you look at stories from the Los Angeles Times and other news outlets, particularly in California, they kept saying, and you could even go back to 2023, they keep saying California has an arson problem. Indeed, California has a homeless problem, and apparently meth addicts like to start fires. So there's no shortage of people willing to do this. But is there some sort of conspiracy? So it looks like the mainstream narrative will be, yes, it was started by arson, but these are just meth heads. It wasn't any sort of conspiracy to clear land and clear residents out of an area designated to be a smart city before the 2028 Olympics. The Wall Street Journal is reporting armed homeowners defying the rules of LA's burn zones. Residents who survived calamitous fires in Pacific Palisades and Altadena, hold their ground in burned out neighborhoods, skirting evacuation orders to defend what is left. Thank God for the Second Amendment, because when all else fails, you'll still have a gun. And that's the important part, to defend you and yours, to defend your property, private property, cornerstone of capitalism, and the hedge against Marxist state rule. Another headline here from PJ Media, stunner. California saved a shrub instead of protecting humans from LA firestorm. So, the LA Times reported in 2019 that the Department of Public Works wanted to replace old wooden electricity poles with steel ones to lessen the fire fuel in Topanga Canyon. They also hoped to widen the fire breaks on the slope leading from the Palisades to the Pacific Coast Highway. This quote, this project will help ensure power reliability and safety while helping reducing wildfire threats, the DPW said in a statement on Thursday, and this is back. Then these wooden poles were installed between 1933 and 1955 and are now past their useful service, so they wanted to put steel poles in there to lessen the fuel for wildfires. But then the story from the LA Times goes on to say, but in doing the work, say state authorities, the crews potentially destroyed hundreds of Bronton milk vetch plants, an endangered species whose remaining numbers have dwindled to less than 3,000 in the wild. Wow. And so they didn't go through with the project because they were worried about a milk vetch plant. So this is just one of the concerns people have about California's crazy environmentalist policies. Now, I'm all for environmentalism, not the kind practiced by Maoists, to use it as a cudgel and a narrative to distract people from what is more important. The idea here is you want to save the smelt, you want to save the milk vetch plant. Well, you have to weigh it against how that's going to affect your society, the civilization there in Los Angeles, because it's not worth a milk vetch plant to have $250 billion worth of fire damage. Now, those are some quotes from the BBC, who originally quoted high at $150 billion worth of damage in LA. And the lowball numbers, conservative numbers, are 30 to 50 billion. It's going to be more than that. And that money, that $100 billion at least, will be used to build the LA Smart City. Speaking of which, One American News is reporting California Newsom announces LA 2.0, calls for $2.5 billion Marshall Plan to rebuild LA in new direction. I believe I reported this yesterday, where the idea was, this is supposed to be his plan, LA 2.0. But what he's really doing is adopting LA Smart City 2028 plan. So the Marshall Plan to rebuild LA is going to rebuild LA as a smart city. And this is what the neo-feudalist lords, the technocratic lords, have in mind. 50-minute city that you won't be able to venture out of unless you have special permission. And that everything you do will be tracked and traced. So The Hill is reporting in this opinion piece by Merrill Matthews, the red state in California's future. There are two likely results of the disastrous wildfires burning in the Los Angeles area. First, thousands of Californians who lost their homes will respond to the tragedy by moving from the worst managed state in the country to a red state with its lower taxes and cost of living and more political sanity and accountability. Second, those who remain will begin the effort to oust some of the incompetent elected leaders and vote in more responsible people. Either way, there's a good chance that a red state is in many, perhaps most, California's future. We could only hope. Most of us who witnessed the blowback from many of the residents there in California towards the communist mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, and towards the evil, deviant Gavin Newsom, who spent billions of dollars on homelessness only to increase homelessness. Why? Because they subsidized homelessness. Next, from the New York Post, Kamala Harris roasted for word salad advice to LA fire victims as lame duck VP winds down term. Classic Kamala. Is it Kamala? Kamala. Kimmeltoe. No. It doesn't really matter because she will never re-enter politics. And we're going to get into that in just a second, but let's stay with this story. So if you didn't see it on the news, we'll talk about it. Harris, 60, urged Southern California residents displaced by widespread evacuation orders to remain patient as first responders work to ensure neighborhoods are safe to re-enter. However, several ex-users noted that it took the vice president far more words than necessary to express her point. It's critically important, she said, to the extent you can find anything that gives you an ability to be patient in this extremely dangerous and unprecedented crisis, that you do. She can't speak. So she's not an intellectual, and she's not very articulate. So what she does is and she's really stupid because of this point of view. She looks at people who are intelligent, intellectual, and articulate and sees the way they speak, a lot of times with flowery language, but only the intellectual only does that. Most intellectuals, not on the left, but on the right, use more language to be more articulate. So you just put a lot of words in there to sound smart. You put words in there to specifically demonstrate your vocabulary and be able to articulate exactly what you mean. But she looks at that and just goes, I'm just going to put a lot of words in there to make myself sound smart. I mean, that's what the leftists do. If you ever read The Atlantic, all they do is put a lot of words in there, and they could have said it in a more concise manner. And that's what we learned from journalism. You only put in there, particularly in the beginning, what is necessary. There's more Kamala Harris news. So this is from page 6 of the Post. Kamala Harris eyeing post-loss life in New York City as second gentleman tours $20,000 a month luxury space. So Kamala Harris is going to try to reinvent herself in a new area. So apparently she did some polling and found that New York leftists or East Coast leftists really like her. And so she's going to reinvent herself in New York, much like Hillary Clinton did. So maybe there's an opportunity for her there. Maybe governor of New York, who knows? Maybe senator. So the story on page 6 goes on to say, I heard they were looking to be bi-coastal. Well, why is that? She's been a California girl for some time. Someone else said the soon-to-be former Veep and second gentleman intend for Los Angeles to continue to be their base when they leave #1 observatory circle this week. That's where the second family lives, but conceded that Emhoff, Kamala's husband, has indeed been casting his eye over some homes in the Big Apple on the couple's behalf. I think it's to reinvent her political career. I don't think it would be possible in California. And there's there's not much to be proud of over there. So she's going to reinvent herself here. So don't be surprised if all of a sudden you see her on the political scene in New York. Speaking of crazy leftists, Michelle Obama will skip Trump inauguration, but ex-presidents Obama, Clinton, and Bush will be there. Everyone's going to be there except Michelle Obama. What was heard is, I do not want to be in the same room with that man, said Trump. So Michelle Obama doesn't want to be around Trump, apparently. Maybe she's afraid that, I don't know, he's going to throw her in prison or expose. As Joan Rivers once said, we all know she's a tranny. It's okay, Joan Rivers said before she died on the operating table. I hope that fate doesn't belie me, or befall me, I should say, not belie. More news from One America News. Trump says he will create an external revenue service to collect revenue from foreign sources. And I think, to be honest with you, he should just supplant the IRS with the ERS. And I think the federal income tax system is illegal, and there shouldn't be a federal income tax. I have issues with income tax, but I guess if your state levies it, it's a little bit different than the federal government. And the federal government can find funding sources elsewhere. Besides, if you get rid of that revenue stream, maybe they won't spend as much as they do. From the Wall Street Journal, Trump team sidelines RFK Jr.'s anti-vaccine aides. A split has emerged over the priorities of the Department of Health and Human Services. Stay with me now. So, people have been consumed by the confirmation hearings of Pete Hegseth and what's going to happen with Tulsi Gabbard, and we're going to get to that in just a second. But RFK Jr., the issue has always been, what is going to be the administration's position in terms of the corporate behemoth of the pharmaceutical industry? So Trump, as a businessman, does not want to put pharmaceutical industry on its heels. I think it should be done personally, but I know that's not what Trump has in mind. So the Trump administration is doing their best to de-radicalize, for better or for worse, RFK Jr.'s approach to traditional medicine, which includes pharmaceuticals. So, is this understandable? Yes. Do I agree? No. I think, obviously, the FDA should be antagonistic towards the pharmaceutical industry and not benevolent towards the pharmaceutical industry. It shouldn't be a rubber stamp for what the pharmaceutical industry wants to do. So I hope that is indeed the case, that the new Department of Health and Human Services has a more skeptical approach with drug science, particularly with vaccines, but most particularly with the testing or the manipulation of pathogens. which is, to me, is way above and beyond pharmaceuticals, because you can choose, I hope, and this should be the case, because I'm so glad Biden is gone, because he affected my life in such a tremendous way that no other president ever had. In any case, so pharmaceutical drugs you could choose to take, or vaccines you should be able to choose to take. And if you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. So that's in your control. But the testing and the manipulation of pathogens could prove deadly and disastrous for the human population on the globe, as we've seen with COVID. So that is by way beyond vaccines, as long as we have freedom of choice, of course. So, all right, let's get into the text of this article, at least the lead. Two vaccine skeptics who have been advising Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as he prepares to become health secretary have been sidelined by Trump transition officials. People familiar with the matter said, underscoring a split over immunizations in the Make America Healthy Again movement. Advisor Stephanie Spear and lawyer Aaron Siri have asked prospective administration hires about their beliefs around vaccines. It's understandable. He doesn't want to pick a fight with one of the biggest corporate lobbies. He should, because the pharmaceutical industry has sided with socialism time and time again, but I'm not going to get into that. Soma. PJ Media is reporting how the Democrats lost to Pete Hegseth. Oh, if you didn't see the confirmation hearings, the thing I didn't like was Hegseth was tempered with the Democrats, stoic, which was great. But he should have had the same demeanor with the Republicans too. He took advantage of the friendly inquisition by Republicans to get emotional, and that didn't bode well as far as I was concerned watching it. But he did so with the Democrats, which is great, because all they did is hurl unproven accusations at him, which kind of fell flat. So the next article up is from Politico, though. By targeting Hegseth, Democrats open a path for Gabbard. GOP insiders view Trump's nominee for intelligence director as far more vulnerable than his choice for Pentagon chief, which is true. Well, let's get into the story. For over a month, even as Pete Hegseth has faced extensive scrutiny over his personal conduct and fitness to be defense secretary. Fitness? Come on, Politico. They're captured. It goes on to say, high-level Republicans have quietly considered former Democrat Representative Tulsi Gabbard to be President-elect Donald Trump's most imperiled nominee. GOP show of support has not prompted Senate Democrats to pivot toward confronting Gabbard, because she's a Democrat. That has surprised and even disappointed their Republican counterparts, some of whom told me they would be more willing to make common cause to stop former Democrat from Hawaii who holds isolationist and libertarian national security views outside the Senate GOP mainstream. Why wouldn't Democrats shift toward a softer target, especially knowing that few of their Republican colleagues want to cast one, if that many, votes against the Trump nominee? This is the issue here. What the fuck is wrong with the national security person, surveillance czar, basically is what it is? What is wrong with him being isolationist, which I think proves to be a good thing, and libertarian, which is also a good thing, because then she's going to protect the rights of Americans. And what is only of concern is her patriotism. The worry really is at the fact that she was a World Economic Forum young leader, and that she may harbor globalist allegiance and not allegiance to this country, but that's certainly arguable because she's in the armed service. I think she'd be great at this. And I don't think Republicans should vote against her. And I think the ones that do should be targeted politically, not in any sort of violent way. The story in Politico goes on to say, yes, this is a commentary on the bargain pre-Trump Republicans have made. They may align to press the Democrats, and they'd sure like the media to dig up damaging stories on Gabbard so the Democrats can amplify them, which in turn would prompt Trump to grow irritated at the skeptical coverage and abandon her, a version of the Matt Gaetz appointment, in other words. It's fucking Politico. Telling people how to vote or suggesting that this narrative is actually real. It's not. Republicans in the Senate have to decide whether they're going to side with Trump or they're going to side with the Democrats. Democrats, some of who might favor Gabbard because she was once a Democrat. They should because she's a libertarian, but whatever. Is all the, hey, and I'm no fan of Pete Hegseth for defense secretary. I think it should be appointed. I think they should all be given a shot because they can always be replaced. Okay, it's not like you're putting somebody on the Supreme Court. The story goes on to say it's hardly a secret that Senate Republicans have misgivings about Gabbard. One aide to a senior lawmaker told this reporter that in a secret ballot, she'd lose at least 15 Republicans. Again, and that may be a conservative estimate. I just have to say that Politico is like the Hill, right? They report shit, okay, that from and this has become so prevalent, reporting shit from anonymous sources that turns out not to be true. So they're weaving a narrative. Politico is captured by the CIA, by the way. So one aide to a senior lawmaker told this reporter that. So this person isn't named, so you can't verify that this was said. In a secret ballot, she'd lose at least 15 Republicans. How do we know that's even true? You're weaving a narrative on something that you can't even prove. Now, if you had somebody on the record with this, okay. All right. But just like the Hill did with conservatives are against Mike Johnson, were there a few that were against Mike Johnson? Sure. But the Hill reported that all these conservatives were against Mike Johnson. They weren't. It's just fake news. And I think this is fake news too. It goes on to say, one of the few willing to go public with their concerns is Senator John Curtis, the Utah freshman. Curtis told me that colleague Alex Burns Tuesday morning told this reporter's colleague at Politico Forum in Washington that Gabbard has been too low profile, that needs more information before he can consider the nomination. All right, and there are two things with this. This is, first of all, why can't this reporter call up Senator John Curtis, a Utah freshman, call him up and get him to recall or to repeat his statement that he made to your colleague, unless it's on video, because now you're taking hearsay from another reporter's notes. You're not supposed to do that either. So, but I guess it was taped because she said it was at a this reporter said it was a Politico forum. And it wasn't distressed at all. It just said she was too low profile, that he needs more information. So, other words, he doesn't know enough about her to vote for her. That doesn't mean that he's against voting for her. So this whole article is built on a lie. I urge my senators, both of them Democrats, to vote for Tulsi Gabbard. They won't. I don't imagine any of Trump's nominees will get a single Democratic vote. I hope I'm surprised by that, but we'll see. Moving on here, stay with me now. The Federalist is reporting, I will be supporting Pete. Senator Joni Ernst backs Hegseth following conservative pressure campaign. So Joni Ernst was put on a pedestal because she is a rape victim and she was worried about Hegseth's supposed sexual assault and that claim that he wasn't found criminal. He wasn't found criminally responsible for any abuse in this sexual encounter that he said was consensual. But it's good that Joni Ernst is on board. All right, got to move a little quickly now. The One American News is reporting Biden administration lifts Cuba terrorism designation before Trump steps in. NBC News reports Biden administration removes Cuba from the state sponsors of terrorism. Catholic Church have been negotiating with Cuba to free hundreds of political prisoners, many of whom were jailed following unprecedented protests in July. And then it just talks about that they're going to free people from jails, but they're not going to be allowed to leave Cuba. So the brutal crackdown initially led to the arrest of more than 1,000 people. This is in July 2021. During unprecedented island-wide protests. It's a authoritarian communist country. So it should be given no quarter. Same thing with China, in my opinion. We're ideologically opposed to that kind of government. And the subversive nature of communism and socialism, for that very fact that it's subversive, we should be very skeptical of any government that espouses those types of things. The Federalist is reporting DOJ fines Minnesota restaurant for verifying immigrant work permits. They ask for too many documents. The Justice Department reached an 11th hour settlement with a Minnesota-based restaurant chain for $95,000 civil penalty, in addition to mandatory employment training after a company required more documents than necessary to verify workers' permits. According to the 7-page indictment, Brick and Bourbon, a restaurant group with 3 locations in Minnesota, will be required to post forms outlining employees' rights in both English and Spanish and undergo additional reviews into the employment practices. It's unlawful, they say, for employers to ask for these documents. Given the nature of the illegal immigrant population and invasion that has happened, it doesn't surprise me that businesses go above and beyond to prove that their employees are here legally, particularly in light of the new Trump administration vowing to deport people. So maybe they don't want to be left in a lurch if ICE comes into the restaurant and takes away all their employees. But it's typical of the Biden administration. You're looking into it too much. I don't know why that should be the case. Particularly if these people may be here without documentation. Or they might be part of MSN13. Washington Times is reporting man pleads guilty in string of MS-13 killings that stunned New York suburbs. A man who helped lead an MS-13 clique in New York pleaded guilty Tuesday in federal racketeering case involving 7 murders, including the 2016 killings of 2 high school girls that focused the nation's attention on violent Central American street gang, MS-13. Yaro Sayens, 28, entered the plea in federal court in Central Islip. So I believe this guy is not an illegal alien. His family might be, but he's lived here all his life, apparently. But still, he was part of this El Salvadorian street gang, which is different than Trendaragua, which is a prison gang. that highlights the fact that Venezuela opened up its prisons, and so violent prison gangs took control of many, or getting control of many apparently apartment buildings in Boulder, Colorado. All right, switching gears here, Fox News is reporting the former View co-host says Joey Behar calling Carrie Underwood's Un-American a selfish publicity game. Calling out the all-American girl for not loving America is ridiculous, Elizabeth Hasselbeck said. Well, we don't care about what Elizabeth Hasselbeck says. What we do care about is the fact that Joe Behar called Carrie Underwood un-American. A renowned country singer that found her fame through the American talent show, American Idol, who is beloved by Americans and is an American citizen. Supposedly, Joy Behar said she was un-American because she voted for Trump or she supports Trump. These people have their heads up their asses. Would you characterize MAGA or America First or people that vote for Trump or like Trump as anything but unpatriotic? They call themselves patriots. How is that un-American? I think if you attack patriots, that makes you un-American. It's not the other way around. Now, people are free, and also what makes you un-American is people are free in this country to believe whatever they want or support whatever type of political movement they want. Political speech is the most protected speech. That's American, not whatever you're espousing. Joy Behar, who was upset during COVID because she couldn't go to Italy. How many places have you visited in the United States? You've gone to the Grand Canyon? Or gone to Mount Rushmore? I doubt it. Or some of the beautiful national parks. Just the News is reporting stay-at-home bureaucrats' congressional probe exposes billions in waste from federal telework gigs. Nothing wrong with being able to work from home. I like this. The unions were fighting for it. I get it. But if you're a public servant, it's a little different. So if you want to work from home on Fridays, I think that's fair. Maybe just during the summer, I think that's fair. But you got to go to your office because your supervisor is the American people. And your direct supervisor was hired by the American people to make sure you're not wasting American taxpayer dollars. More news and headlines from the Washington Examiner. Resistance softens among Democrats as Trump returns to the White House. By W. James Antle III. I don't know. It's the Democrats' resistance is softened as much as the Iraqi military softened after the invasion in 2003. It's just going to go underground, and it's going to spring up in other avenues with less attachment probably to the Democratic Party because the Democratic Party is in a rebranding phase, and they don't want to have any crazy blue hair terrorist statements to blow back on them. Like Madonna's, I thought a lot about blowing up the White House lately. I mean, fuck. She should have went to jail for that. More news from the Federalist. I haven't really talked about this. This is Jack Smith's report. Proves that the media were lying, were always lying about J6 insurrection. Well, we know that simply because J6 was an insurrection. The FBI said so. We all knew so. We all knew it. The fact that you would have had to been armed and actually fight your way into the Capitol to take over the seat of government. That was not the plan. The plan was to protest, which turned into a riot, which was in support of Republicans to delay the certification of the 2020 election vote to examine fraud, which did occur. The use of mail-in ballots that were actually just printed ballots that were trucked in and delivered to overcome Trump's win. So they should have let him win, because I think it's more powerful now that Trump's coming back to office. But from my personal point of view, I wish that wasn't the case, because I probably still have my job and my bank account wouldn't have been devalued by 20%. The article goes on to say former special counsel Jack Smith, who resigned in disgrace last week after his lawfare prosecutions of President-elect Donald Trump were dismissed, releasing his findings in his case, January 6th case. While Smith attempted to use the report as an outgoing smear against an incoming president, he also finally admits that what many of us have known all along, that the Capitol riot on January 6, 2021 was on an insurrection, and Smith did not believe he could convince even a far-left D.C. jury that it was one. Say. They put was and one. On top of that, he also could not prove that Trump incited the riot, of course. Smith's lawfare was clearly politically motivated and essentially meritless. Federalists covered on numerous occasions. The prosecutor attempted to save face by insisting that the claim from Trump that my decisions as a prosecutor were influenced or directed by Biden administration or other political actors was laughable. What's laughable is Smith dismantled the left's own arguments that January 6th was an insurrectional allegation he did not pursue. So Trump was responsible of what? Wall Street Journal is reporting the Security Exchange Commission sues Elon Musk over Twitter stock buys, escalating long simmering feud. Lawsuit alleges Musk misHeld shareholders by not reporting his 2022 investment in the social media company in a timely manner. All this is the leftist machine in Washington, the Biden administration, attacking Elon Musk for supporting the conservative cause. MAGA, Tea Party, America First, whatever you want to call it. I call it the New Republicans. The New Republicans are more libertarian and more concerned with constitutional freedoms than conservative, but they tend to be more conservative, but perhaps more than traditional Republicans. All right. Here's something interesting that we need to talk about. The Federalist also reports new Ohio law stops teachers from talking to kids about sex behind parents' back. Governor Mike DeWine signed into law the Parents' Bill of Rights. This law requires public school districts to craft policies that encourage parental involvement in their children's education, particularly in areas related to sexuality and religion. Parents are the best teachers, DeWine said. Bill turns Ohio schools into mandatory reporters, but to parents instead of government officials. Under the new law, House Bill 8, Ohio schools will be required to provide parents the opportunity to review instructional materials that include sexual content and report on physical and mental well-being and providing health care to the child. Parents have to be notified. Why this is important? Because of this. This headline, reported by the Post-Millennial, LGBTQ activist teacher in Missouri charged with child sex crimes. This guy, Brumman, was charged with 1 count of distributing child pornography over the internet and 1 count of possessing child pornography. Missouri high school teacher was taken into custody on child sex crime charges. Seth Brumman, 37 of Greenwood, has been accused of distributing and uploading at least 12 images of child pornography in recent months. He teaches at Lee Summit High School and was placed on administrative leave following the arrest. Sexual deviancy. And what's even more troubling is that this guy has access to a population of young people. And that's why a lot of pedophiles get careers and get jobs in areas where they have access to young people. There's more. Post Millennial has this headline. Virginia LGBTQ activist, nurse practitioner pleads guilty to federal child sex crimes. Lucas Allen Fussell, 42, of Only, pleaded guilty to 2 counts of distribution of child pornography. Distributed and possessed child pornographic videos and images depicting the rape and sexual abuse of minors. Authorities said some victims were as young as toddlers. He faces maximum 40 years in prison. As young as fucking toddlers. These people are sexual deviants. Whatever your sexual proclivity is, keep it in your home and leave children out of it. Now, if there's some guy that's on OnlyFans or looking at porn on the internet and, mistakenly watches or downloads a video of a girl or a guy, for that matter, that's age is questionable, okay. It could be an adult, it could be 18-year-old woman or man, hard to say. But when you're distributing videos of sex abuse of toddlers, you should get life in prison. I mean, it's one thing for mistakenly, whether it's Matt Gaetz having sex with a 17-year-old, he didn't know how old she was. Maybe he thought she was 18 or 19 or whatever. Maybe she said she was. I believe that was the case. Or if you're online looking at porn and you mistakenly look at a girl that's 17 and you think she's 18 or 19, I mean, that's a common mistake when you're looking at teenagers. But if it's a toddler, there should be no leniency. And I also understand that looking at porn is not the same as, conducting the act. However, in the case of a toddler, it's just as bad. I mean, because realistically, what do you get the porn for? So to sexually gratify yourself. Ugh. All right, more news from the Federalist. NBC White House correspondent Yamiche Alcindor does not deserve a seat in the briefing room. That is indeed the case, in my belief. And the reason they say that is because Alcindor is not in the press room for reporting, but to plant seeds that will grow into narratives the left wants the public to believe. You might not have seen this woman in the press room, but that's what she does. She baits, usually Karine Jean-Pierre, into fleshing out narratives that are false. She'll ask the most inane questions. Well, when the point is usually driven by reporters like Fox's Peter Doocy, you have these leftists, how does climate change? Do you think the wildfires are worsened by climate change? Does the Biden administration understand how climate change affects wildfires? Or, Karine Jean-Pierre, excuse me, Miss Press Secretary, do you believe the LGBT community has to be fearful of the incoming Trump administration? I mean, all these type of questions are indeed planting seeds that grow into false narratives. It's propaganda. Next headline here, got to speed it up. We only got a couple minutes left. Wall Street Journal, the South Korea arrest president on second attempt. It took 1,000 police. Authorities detained the impeached Yoon Suk Yeol, a move some say prolongs divisions that have racked South Korea since he declared martial law in December. So if you didn't know what was going on with the story, so this guy, Yoon Suk Yeol, is the South Korean Trump. And purportedly, he has a huge patriotic following because he was pointing out the North Korean, but the communist infiltration of South Korea. And he was making this an issue, and people applauded him for it. So you have to take that into account. At South Korea, he was pushing back against the globalists opening up towards communism. And that's obviously an issue because communism was basically invented by globalists. Internationalists, they used to be called in the previous centuries. In the 19th and 20th centuries, they were called internationalists that were propagating and promulgating communism and socialism. And this guy just pointed it out, and he declared martial law because he was trying to resist the attempts of the globalist infected bureaucracy in South Korea that was trying to stop him from carrying out what he thought his mission was to root out the infiltrators. You didn't hear this? Starbucks reverses open bathroom policy. Now you'll have to buy something first. A coffee will require that people make a purchase. A coffee house will require that people make purchase before using its bathroom or hanging out in its stores. Thank God. I mean, it's common sense. If you're a retail establishment, you can't just go in there and hang out. Starbucks down the street from me had to close out its seating area because it's next to a high school, and the high schoolers would just hang out there and they wouldn't buy anything. And they were causing disturbances and bothering other customers. So now the other customers have nowhere to sit, and they turned it into a takeout counter. Fucking people. But the point being is that you can't, I'm not against going into establishment to use the bathroom. Everybody's got to use the bathroom from time to time. But the problem is, especially in larger municipalities and big cities, homeless people and junkies would go in there and lock themselves in the bathroom for hours and shoot up. Because if you've ever used heroin, you shoot up and then you nod off. So it's not like you go in the bathroom and you take a couple hits of pot and then you go on your way. You go, you shoot up, and you nod off for an hour. And so the bathroom's locked for an hour because someone's a heroin user or junkie is in the friggin' bathroom. Or homeless people go in there and they wash or shit all over the floor or whatever. But I'm not saying on occasion people that aren't customers shouldn't be able to use the bathroom. What I'm saying is that it should be not exclusively, but for the most part, they should police it for customers only. More headlines. Wall Street Journal, even Harvard MBAs are struggling to land jobs. The latest crop of elite business school graduates are taking months to find new jobs. They're finding jobs, but the point being is that they're being displaced by AI. And most people are. Like I said, the robots won't be able to do plumbing and electrical work right away or build a house, but that's coming. But for the meantime, all the thinking jobs are going to be displaced by AI. So if you spent several $100,000 on your education, I think you made a bad bet. This has been in the news lately. It's kind of breaking. Red Note, what to know about the Chinese app TikTok users are flocking to. And we've been talking about communism all day today throughout the headlines, and this is the problem. Communism is globalism. You know, it's postmodern doctrine, and communism is like old terminology. It's newfound socialism is rebranded into postmodern thought. And so, but the point is, people are flocking to this. It's all the downtrodden losers who want a collective of fat, ugly people to rule the world because they've been downtrodden so long. It's always been the new hope of people that have been stepped on by society. So that's the thing, whether, in Mao's revolution, it was the young people, or, the rural that were taken advantage of by the intellectual class or whatever. Society should be based on merit. That's just the way I look at it. You could make your way. Everybody's got to make their own way. And so however you could do that, I wish you all the success in the world. But using a collective to target other groups is not, first of all, the group is a construct, right? There's the individual and there's the all. However you want to classify that, right? Groups are an artificial construct. So whether it's LGBTQ or whatever your team is, fat people or whatever, LGBTQ is where we go to lately. It's the same thing. Instead of class warfare, you have either, instead of class, you have race or gender or sex. They use any division they can to pit people against each other. So there's the all, which you should embrace. But at the same time, you should also embrace the individual, which is the one. All for one, one for all. That sound familiar? The lead from Reuters goes on to say Chinese social media app Red has been thrust into the limelight after more than 500,000 TikTok users recently joined the platform. That's 500,000 in protest against likely imminent ban on the short video app in the United States. Known by its Chinese name, Xiao Hongshu, in China, the platform most popular lifestyle app where users document their lives and post recommendations. Red is often regarded as the localized adaptation of Instagram in China. Its Chinese name, Yao Hongshu, translates into Little Red Book, a phrase which traditionally refers to the collection of sayings by Chinese Communist leader Mao Zedong. There you go. The Little Red Book, you probably don't know about the Little Red Book, but the Little Red Book is important in the Cultural Revolution of China. So what a goof that 500,000 Americans are joining this app that refers to the Little Red Book. I mean, people don't understand. It's like, you want to use TikTok, fine, but you have to understand it's a surveillance tool. And also it's a propaganda tool of the communist Chinese. And the globalists keep pushing socialism in China on people because they want to supplant or overwrite the individual with the collective. The collective and the all. They refer to the collective as the all, but it's really not the all. It's the group, which again, I said is a construct. You didn't see this? Fast Company, Sony PlayStation is adding smell. Yes, you read that right. To its games, a new trailer shows players experiencing the post-apocalyptic world of The Last of Us with smell-o-vision. It's immersion. It's immersion. It's to get you out of reality. You have to be a player in reality, not an NPC in reality. You have to be a player in reality. And you have to fight the supplanting of the individual. It's the smallest minority. You are an individual, and you must fight the establishment that is trying to put the collective over you. And that's the whole thing about environmentalism too, is forget about your selfish needs. Don't read Hannah Arendt. Don't think about the individual. The individual is greedy. Think about all of us, the planet. That whole line of thinking is just to give up your individual liberties and rights. All right, thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, share the podcast, leave a comment. Join me every day, Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. live on Rumble. Trying to simulcast onto YouTube. It's not working out as well as I thought it would be. And join me tonight for an edition of Tuesdays with Perry on Wednesday, special edition of Tuesdays with Perry, where we're going to discuss the smart city conspiracy in LA, among other things. Check me out on social media, X, Facebook, Getter Minds, True Social, Substack. Check out my other website, livepop.org. Stay hip to the trick, and I'll see you later. Respect.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
You can't handle the truth.
The new world order. The new world order